towards a common word between us and them. That was a title of a global letter from 138 Muslim leaders and scholars to the so-called Christian world.
In a small country like Denmark, where Christianity is the major religion and Islam is the second biggest religion, it's important for us to be in a dialogue. And this common word was a fantastic response to the growing hardline rhetoric which is out there.
For centuries, Muslims and Christians have been involved in dialogue, trying to eliminate the negative sides of their shared history and coexist peacefully. This has never been an easy task for the general population, or for intellectuals and opinion makers representing both faiths.
4 years ago, we went into partnership with the Arab Group for Muslim-Christian Dialogue based in Beirut, Lebanon. And this time we will focus on the challenge to society and to our religious communities from an increasing tendency to extremism or radicalism, both in the Middle East and here in the west of Europe. There is this increasing tendency.
To some, interfaith dialogue sounds like a pleasant dream, but in reality, any attempt to gather people of different faiths and arrange interfaith dialogues opens up for a range of questions.
In the Middle East, we have double cross, two faces. There is too much religion and too little spirituality.
How do we get from the situation today where religion is abused by extremism, by governments, by dictatorships, to give legitimization for conflicts into a situation where we can use interfaith dialogue?
Dialogue is a very powerful instrument. The sword has never ever been as sharp as the pen. We're kind of being put against each other, pitched against each other as Christians against Muslims. And in Denmark, where many people who have been working deliberately in the opposite direction to show that we're not opposites, we're not enemies of each other, rather we are friends of each other. And if there's anything we can say is our common challenge, it's the secularization which is taking place and the polarization.
In light of a charged and polarized history, religious scholars from both faiths in Denmark and the Arab world attempted to change the notion that interfaith dialogue and coexistence is impossible. The men and women behind this mission decided to sit together and test each other's ability to negotiate, reflect, accept, resolve, and sometimes reject.
The next step was to invite the Muslim Council of Denmark. We decided together with the Muslim Council to form a contact group for Muslims and Christians in Denmark.
Therefore, to sign on to the common word and to line up with one of the big Christian platforms in Denmark was one way of reaching out and saying, we agree with this document and we agree with the whole spirit of it, which is we live together and we all have to make it work together.
Some of the first work we did together was to take a critical view on the perceptions of religion in the public space.
When we're talking about extremism, we need to talk about all kinds of extremism. Because, as I see it, the far-right extremism that is on a rise in Denmark and in Europe in general, and Islamic extremism goes hand in hand.
Fear makes extreme extremisms thrive. Therefore, we should never play the fear card.
Islam and Christianity are not Danish phenomenons. They are global phenomenons, and they exist in all parts of the world. And Muslims and Christians have been at each other, even at each other's throats, for hundreds of years. But also in other places coexisting side by side and living peacefully together. And Lebanon being such a melting pot as it is definitely a very interesting country to look into, an interesting environment.
The Danish and Arab groups exchanged several official visits and held 4 conferences in Copenhagen, Beirut and Istanbul. The meetings continued while the Arab world witnessed a period of turmoil. The conversations brought to light fundamental differences in opinions, but also new knowledge to Arab and Danish participants. The talks went from focusing on what Muslims and Christians could say with a common voice, to how Muslims and Christians could influence world affairs, marked by conflict and war between people of different faiths and nationalities.
Of course, there are differences between Muslims and Christians. That's obvious. That's 2 different religions. But as people of faith, what can we say together as common concerns? There's always a risk to that. If you start focusing on the doctrines, for example, if you're only focusing on the theological differences, that is also within the churches and within the Muslim communities, if you only discuss this is the difference and that's why we cannot be together or we cannot work together or whatever, there's a risk for that.
So therefore you're always very cautious in the beginning of a dialogue to see where are we. And once you find the footing, you can open up more and more. And once that happens, the very combination of people who determine whether this is going to become a strictly religious or spiritual dialogue, or whether we're shifting into something more political or everyday kind of matters.
من أن الحوار لا يزال حاجة مهمة، لا بل هو الحاجة، وأن منطق العنف لابد وأن يخفت أمام هذا الإصرار، وأن التطرف لا يعالج فقط بالأدوات العسكرية والحروب.
We have to see, do people still believe in dialogue? I doubt that people today in the Middle East find that dialogue is the tool.
To politicize religion does often mean that you put the religion or the faith issues into hostage, that you say that it is very un-Christian or un-Muslim to do this and that. To be a true Muslim or to be a true Christian, you have to do this and that. That is a dangerous path to follow.
Because once religious people tend to take their religion into a political dimension, politicizing their religion or treating religion as a political manifesto, they become as dangerous as politicians when they treat politics as a religion. And both of these extremes are today playing a big role in creating havoc around the planet.
Because many politicians, they know that if they want to make division among people, they can use many tools. Religion is one of them. Ethnicity is another one. Gender issues is a third one. Whatever. They can use different tools. So I think as people of faith, we need to say no to the misuse of religion in the political sphere.
We're on very, very shaky ground when we in the West start talking about to the rest of the world about democracy and human rights. Because both have so regularly been used as a part of the political armory in relations with the rest. Look how we used the human rights argument in relation to the Soviet bloc in the 70s and 80s. Look how we've used democracy in relation to the Middle East, to Latin America, to other places.
The Christians in the Middle East are not a continuation of the Christians of Europe. We are not Europeans. We don't want them to intervene because their intervention will be bad for our relation there in the area.
The Christians of the area, of the Arab area, of Lebanon, of Tunisia, Egypt, of Algeria, they are the people. They are us. They are not imported from another country. They are not a different people, so that they are minority. They are the people.
The discussion of the term minority came to a quite harsh discussion. You cannot say, okay, that's the same. We have a minority of Muslims in Denmark, like you have a minority of Christians in the Middle East. I think that the Christians in the Middle East should never be seen as a branch of the Western churches, because it's not.
The home audience here, particularly we can say the conservative Christian audience, the right-wing Christian audience, they are the ones who are continuously advocating this, the Christians are under pressure out there. So to please that audience, they put such programs which are not wanted by the Christians who are at the receiving end of it, because they're in a totally different situation than what is being perceived back here. So this is actually not foreign policy, this is home policy, but played out somewhere else.
Ahmad Mojahedi from the Danish Muslim Council said today that religion is not the source of the conflict. We must analyze deeper than that and see that the present conflict in the Middle East is about power, it is about economics, it is about influence, it is wars often fought through proxies.
The Danish government is following a double strategy, interfering with military action, trying to strengthen the civil cooperation like our initiative. And I would very much like that we are concerned about this and how we should approach that in our discussion.
In my daily work, I'm working with development and emergency projects. And one of the things which that whole world, the whole development world has always been very much against is the idea, which has been brought on by Denmark and other countries, that soldiers in uniform go out and build schools or do this or do that. We don't like that mix of matters, because it confuses things. Because if soldiers are seen to be shooting people in one instance, and the next they're handing out the sweets and building schools, then the day we come out there and build schools, we may be suspected of wearing uniform and shooting on people the next day. It's very important to have a clear divisor between the two. So it's clear that the military strategy is one thing which has no impact or influence on the dialogue strategy.
I think in general we had a very good atmosphere. We managed to make a space of trust where we could actually share our concerns on faith issues. And sometimes we even have had hard discussions, hard talks.
How come that we could create East Timor within a few weeks, but we cannot solve the case of Palestine?
Now, what does that remind you of? Soviet psychiatry, as was. The politically dissident, the young person who doesn't toe the line, is now psychologically ill. And I would hate to be in the shoes now of Muslim community leaders in Europe. Increasingly, the way legislation has gone in the last 15 years, anti-terrorism legislation has gone, The only legitimate form of Islam that you can follow is pacifist Islam. If you're not a pacifist Muslim, you are in danger of being caught up in one form or another of anti-terrorism legislation, certainly in Britain.
I remember the first time we came as a delegation to Beirut, telling that this dialogue project was financed fully by the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the so-called Danish-Arab Partnership Program. So they were very happy about hearing that there was an interest from the state of Denmark to support people of faith having dialogue with each other, because for them, the cartoon crisis back in 2005 and 6 still echoed when you talk about the Danish relations in the Middle East.
Anything which is financed from political source may come under that suspicion. But knowing at least the Danish participants very well, I know that none of them are subject to what is decided in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We speak freely and openly about these matters, and as long as we can do that, then I see no problem in the funding coming from there.
The last statement that came out of the Danish and Arab group affirmed, "We are part of a long string of efforts trying to bridge the gaps. We have gone one more step in the right direction. The process of our dialogue meetings was an achievement by itself."
We cannot say we built a bridge. Maybe as a metaphor we did, but we cannot prove as such what we have done. Have we convinced how many people that dialogue is an important, a crucial issue, not only in Denmark but also in the Middle East? It's very difficult to prove. Therefore, I would say that we also need to look at the processes. What came out of the process in itself?
You don't expect a result from a dialogue. You expect something from a negotiation. You expect something from a debate, but you don't expect something from a dialogue. Dialogue doesn't have to produce a result, because dialogue is a process.
Our task as ambassadors of dialogue will not be finished yet. We still have a huge task to do to prove that religion is a gift to society and should not be misused as a part of a conflict to fuel the conflict, to fuel the fire.